If you'd like to take a seat, we're about ready to get started. Well, welcome everybody to our July meeting of North End Neighbourhood Council. It's great to see a big turnout tonight. So obviously, everybody's interested in water. As you all know. Those people who, I don't know how many people we got on Zoom, we still have our Zoom problem that we don't always able to share everything properly backwards and forwards. So if you've got questions on Zoom, stick them in the chat, and we probably will have to handle them after the meeting. We'll give them to whoever the questions are addressed to, be it somebody from the city or somebody from on the presentation, and then we'll follow up after that. So we tend to deal with questions and interaction with the audience in the room, not the Zoom. So that's that. First item up is Porch Fest. So, there she is. You're on camera.
Okay, hello world. Hi, I'm Irina with Porch Fest. I've been here a couple times, and it's this weekend. I'm really excited to be sleeping on Monday. I don't know, I thought maybe, do you guys have questions? Is there any more information I can share? We've got lots of porches. We've got lots of bands. I'm really impressed with the North End because I thought having the North End involved for the first time, I live just south of 6th Ave, so it's kind of my neighborhood, it's not really my neighborhood. I thought that there would be a smaller uptake, but it's half and half, south of 6th Ave versus north. You guys are on board with Porch Fest. Yeah, we've got some hosts and musician here. How many people are hosting? Are there others in the room that are hosting? Cool. Well, enjoy the festival. And yeah, any questions? You can feel the excitement. Yeah. We're gonna have our kind of festival headquarters at Grant Elementary on the south side of the school where the playground and the play field is, just inside the gate. We'll have a few streets closed. You should all have received the postcard with the closures, or not a postcard, a mailer. And right around Grant, we'll have food trucks and porta potties. On North 8th between Cedar and Junette, same thing, food trucks and porta potties. And more stuff all over the place. Come out this weekend. And if you're not a festival goer, if you're concerned about the parking, hopefully I've given you enough notice that you can maybe go to the beach for the weekend or visit your friends in Puyallup or something. Yeah.
You got a certain amount of money from the city, I think it was $10,000, is that right?
I got $10,000 from City Council, that's correct.
How was that money used?
So the largest expense for Porch Fest is paying the bands. There are 280 bands performing, and that's a lot of money to pay them. So that'll pay for a portion of that. The other expenses have to do with renting, road signage, and the marketing and advertising website. Yeah, I'm hoping this year that I can make a little bit of money to pay some of the really hardworking people involved in helping the festival happen, specifically the artists who make all the artwork. There's some posters, postcards in the back, but we'll see how it goes when I do my final tally, if I'm able to pay them or not. But the bands are a priority.
Thank you for so much. And thank you for involving North End Neighbourhood Council, and Danielle has been your champion within the board, so thank you. And we look forward to perhaps this is the of an ongoing relationship. So thank you. Liaison reports, we need to get Alyssa up first, because she's double booked. So Alyssa,
Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm Elisa Mohammed Regala with Parks Tacoma, and I appreciate you letting me bump in front of the other liaisons. A couple of items to follow up that were brought up at last meeting, and I did send some email correspondence, but if you didn't receive that or you don't do email, I wanted to go ahead and repeat what I had sent. Down there on the sand, and so, yes, those plaques were removed when the building was painted a couple of years ago. There is rotted wood, they're in the process of replacing that rotted wood, and the aim was to have the new plaques in place about a month from when I asked the question, which was about a month ago. So maybe the plaques are up already, maybe they will be up any day now. And it won't be so ugly. That was the comment last time. Okay, the other comment last time, or question last time, was regarding impromptu car meets that happened down by the marina, and was there the ability to put up a gate, or how were we addressing that? And we have investigated looking into a lower gate that does cause concerns about if that gate were locked, and what would be the accessibility for folks that are bringing their boats in late into the evening, especially in the summertime. Folks continue to come in well after dark, and it's the only public boat launch that there is in the area. So putting a lower gate in is not the best solution, but we have instituted some additional security detail, and we also had a commitment from TPD to dispatch officers when we identified something, and so they had instituted those dedicated patrols about a week and a half ago. Now, this was about a month ago when I asked this question, so in about the 5 weeks since they've instituted that new procedure, they have stopped at least one event from occurring, and they felt like the level of response was working at this point. So go ahead and continue to keep us on our toes and let us know what your experience is. But this new procedure seems to be working right now, and you can help us monitor if that continues to be true through the summer. And finally, I was emailed a question regarding Jane Clark Field, and the field house there is identified for demolition. It has outlived its useful life. Maintaining it is far more expensive than can be absorbed. So there's a point at which buildings don't have a useful life. So it is scheduled for demolition. At this time, there's no master plan for that park, and there is no plan to be building a building. We've realized that field houses built in that manner don't serve in the same way or with the same activity as when they were first built in their era. So we may be looking at other ways. We're always looking at other ways, the way people really use parks, and what are the amenities that we can build in those parks to really support the kinds of activities that they're interested in. So, are there any questions? I'm happy to.
Questions for Alyssa?
Yes.
A couple of things first. It's lovely to see the flower boxes and start hanging those baskets back on the waterfront.
Yeah.
Last year and this year. And you did an amazing job cleaning up after 4th of July. We walked.
Very impressed.
Yes. Similar talk on the 5th along the waterfront. It was immaculate, and all the garbage was ready. So my question here is regarding 5 Mile Drive. We're fortunate because we can walk around it. Has any thought been given to a trolley bus or something that would enable less able people to access the viewpoint?
We actually, yes, have been studying a trolley around the Point Defiance Park for some years now. At this point, that 5 Mile Drive is still close to any kind of car traffic. So we're exploring how do we create a new pathway that would be more farther inland from the cliffs. So that's a long-term plan. But yeah, we're looking at how do we reinstitute access for folks that are not mobile, other than some sort of wheeled vehicle.
Follow up on that. So I ride my bike around 5 Mile. There's no benches where you can actually sit and look at the water. It seems like you have these view areas for people who used to pull their cars in. It would be nice to actually have some benches where old cyclists like me can sit down and actually look at something rather than.
That's a good point. I will pass that along, and I will also tell our maintenance crews thank you for the 4th of July work.
I'd just like to thank Alyssa. She is really conscientious about the notice following up on questions, and when people email us, we send them on to her and she reports at the next meeting. So thank you, Alyssa. We appreciate that. So our regular community police officer, Kristen, is, I understand, taking some well-earned vacation. So they need 2 people to follow in when she's not here. So welcome up to Tacoma Police Department. I think you got this camera tilted high. I don't think I'm that short.
Hi, I'm Matt Verhoeven. I'm Sergeant within the Community Policing Division. Like Kristen's off at the moment. So a couple things. 4th of July went off pretty well for us and for the city. So that went nice and smooth. Like you guys talked about already, it's been cleaned up pretty well. Lots of vendors and such down there. We didn't have much in the way of policing as well, so that's obviously a positive. Now that that's done, obviously staying warm as we're into the summer here, we're going to continue doing additional emphasis, especially on busy days that tend to be like Friday, Saturday nights throughout the summer. And we'll continue to look at the Rushton Way area, addressing different concerns, as well as additional concerns that might come up in different areas within here. So if you do have something, report something to 311. Kristen or Luke will get that, and we will take a look at that, see if that's something that we can put into that schedule. We may follow up with you to ask some questions. See if that's some other areas that we're looking at. For example, Titlow Beach in that park area, especially in the evening times, we get a bit of activity there. And Candle Park at the moment, I'll go over. So staffing right now, we're at 22 vacancies, and we actually, the city did a hiring bonus for laterals. We actually have 21 people that are currently in the process for hiring. And so they all pan out, right? But that's pretty positive for us. So we've struggled for hiring for quite a while. We've done some different incentives over time, and fairly optimistic that we could get quality candidates out. So we'll keep you guys updated for that. So Candle Park that I mentioned just briefly. So I know it sits just on the border outside of the north end here. However, a lot of people visit that park. So we did have a shooting there a few weeks back with altercation that occurred between a few individuals. There's different investigations that are coming out of that. Some arrests have been made already for some weapons violations and some different things along those lines. And there is some investigation that will continue. They discuss too much of that at the moment, but we will be continuing to monitor that area, work on some ways to potentially improve some safety in that area, as well as some presence here. So, and I think lastly, our commander, lieutenant for the north end here for community policing, was recently promoted. So we have our new commander here, Greg Rock. He's new lieutenant for the north end. So let him take
Thank you. Yeah, Richard Kim, tough shoes to follow. He got promoted to captain, so I'm going to take his place. It's amazing the work that I've already seen from Matt, Kristen, and Luke and the partnerships with the community. It's really amazing that when there's ongoing troubles in the neighborhood, that you can reach out to us and we can help solve the problem for you. I'm a sounding board as well, so anytime you need us through 311 or email us or give us a call, we're there for you because you are the eyes and ears. And there may be something going on in your community that we just don't realize, so if you let us know, we'll do the best we can to solve it. Sometimes it takes time. Like Matt said, they're working on Candle Park right now, and I've been in contact with a lot of the people that live around there, and they're really happy with the work that Kristen, Luke, and Matt have put in, which I'm sure you guys have probably had experience as well. I grew up here in Tacoma. I've been with Tacoma Police Department for 23 years. I've done a ton of stuff within the department, but never community policing. So I'm super excited for this new experience and new job, and to really meet a ton of the members community members that I haven't met before. I went to Jefferson Elementary, Mason Middle School, Silas High School, so I do know a lot of people, but don't be afraid to reach out, and anything that you have troubles with, you can shoot me an email. It's grock, so GROCK, @tacoma.gov. Pretty easy to remember. But we're always here for you, and we have the same things in mind, community safety that you have, and it's top priority for us. So anything you need, just let us know. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes.
So we were given a number and an email address to use to report fireworks over a few days during the Fourth. I'd like to know what is done with that information, if any came in, and the one thing I would point out is somebody might be reluctant if their neighbor across the street that they know and get along fine with is in the middle of the street, say, until midnight or later, shooting off fireworks and it's coming into their yard. They might be reluctant to use that because I don't think you can report anonymous.
Yeah, and so you can always call the non-emergency line as well if you're not comfortable using that. Say, I want to say anonymous, but I'm having firework complaints in this area. We have firework patrols that are going on, officers that are specifically dedicated to those calls. So if you're not comfortable using the system that's put in place for online, feel free to call in with a non-emergency number. Say that you want to stay anonymous. There is a ton of calls that come in, so the response may take a while, but they will respond to the calls. And if it were me and I wanted to stay anonymous, I would just call the non-emergency.
So is that information that comes in those reports, if you can't do it on the day, do they follow up with it later, or is that information filed somehow?
Yeah, anything that is called in is filed with us, so we have a record that that call came in. We're not going to go to your neighbor and say, hey, Greg Rock called and said that you were lighting off fireworks. We're not going to do that. We're going to try to leave everybody's name out of it as much as we can anyways. Anytime, way back in the day, I used to work those patrols as well, and they'd say, hey, who called in? That's not important. What's important is that you stop shooting off fireworks. They're not legal in the city of Tacoma. So we always try to protect the identity of the caller as long as we can. No problem. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Big round of applause for the police.
We may have somebody on a Zoom connection that, let's see, John Gaines. John Gaines. So,
Hi, Peter.
this is John Gaines. Yes, he is. John, you got a report for us tonight or not?
I do. It'll be quick.
Oh, we can't hear you. Wait a minute, got to unmute you first.
Can you hear me okay?
Now we can hear you. Yeah, please go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. Just a reminder, I have a couple meetings. Actually I have three, but I try to attend this one and another one. So grateful that you allow me some time. I had a question from someone from the North End. I'm not sure if they're in the room, but Peter, I can email you this information as well. But they're asking about EV charging stations. And so I mentioned this before, but whether you're thinking about buying an electric vehicle or own one, but charge with a level one, now is the time to install a faster charging station. And there's currently bill credits for these charging stations. And I'll send you an email with this information, but essentially it's a $400 bill credit when you buy and install a level two charger. It's a $400 bill credit when you buy and install a smart splitter, $400 bill credit for the installation of a 240-volt outlet, and then a $600 maximum bill credit for installing more than one of the above. The other update I want to share with y'all, we do have an interim new board member, Devin Hampton. He did serve in the Obama administration, and so a new board member. And so if you can attend those public board meetings, you will see a new face. And then also the other update I would like to share. I have two more updates. The other update I'd like to share, we have a new water superintendent as well. And so we just hired her from Seattle. And so she started, I think, last week. And so I will try to get her out to meet you all at some point in the next several months. And then the last update, I do have some requests out to Tacoma Power to put together a presentation for the North End Neighborhood Council to talk about their operations outside of the city of Tacoma. And so most of you probably know this, but we actually have, I think it's 51% of our customers are outside of the city of Tacoma, and then 49% are inside of the city of Tacoma. And so they have an extensive operation outside of the city of Tacoma. So, Peter, those are my updates.
Any questions for John? The presentation he's talking, I reached out to him because I read something about Tacoma Power having some reservoirs on the Cowlitz River, and I think we're all familiar with Cushman and all of that power. So I thought it'd be interesting next year to get a presentation on where they're in operation and how that all works in together. So, yeah. Any other questions for John? If not, we'll uncouple you and invite Christina up to talk about the city manager's office. We just lost the city manager today.
No, love that.
Yes, so in case you weren't following closely, Hyun Kim has taken the reins now as our city manager, so we're all very excited about that and very grateful to Elizabeth Pauley for all of her wonderful service to the city of Tacoma. Yes, it's good to see you all tonight. I'm Christina Kahn with the city manager's office. I have two things I wanted to flag tonight. One, I wanted to mention just, sir, regarding your question about Porch Fest and the funding for that. I'm going to share with Peter a wonderful report that the city did on the economic impact of our creative sector and the money that is generated for the city by our creative sector. This is everything from jobs to people going into business districts, into shopping. It's about attracting investment, a whole number of wonderful gains that the city gets from investing in these kinds of creative community events. So I'll share that with Peter and ask him to share that around. Okay, and then let me pull up my notes here because in a very exciting turn of events, I got a wonderful question from Peter this week that I get to respond to. And that is about a recent article that came out in Wallet Hub that ranks the best and worst run cities in the United States. So this, for those of you who are not familiar with the article, this is a ranking. They ranked 148 cities across the entire United States, and they ranked them on 36 different metrics that fall into 6 service categories, and then they measured that against the city's per capita budget. And then they ranked them in terms of to determine which ones are the best run and which ones are the worst run. So scrolling down and down and down and down and down the list, sadly Tacoma came in at, anybody want to take a guess?
25.
Close, out of 148?
42.
Spot on, Jeff. You may have cheated on that one. But. Yes, so we did come in 142 out of 148. So this is obviously disappointing at first glance. And so I want to walk through a couple things that I appreciate about this article, but then I also want to talk through a couple of things about the article that are problematic. So first of all, I personally really appreciate Wallet's attempt to use data to compare cities. This is a really important thing that we should all be doing, and the city of Tacoma is very much committed to using a data-driven approach in our own analysis of our services. This is why 311 is such a wonderful and important system, because it helps us collect a lot of data, what's going on in the city, so we can use a data-driven approach. So I appreciate that Wallet Hub was attempting to do that. I also appreciate that Wallet Hub claims that they are not influenced by their advertisers. Cities were not able to just buy their ranking, but that's what they claim. Who knows if that's right. But they do claim that, so I appreciate that. So those are sort of the good parts about the Wallet Hub article. But what I would also urge you all to think about when you're digesting an article like this, a few things. So if you dig into the metrics that they're using in the article, I mentioned earlier, it's 36 different metrics broken down into 6 different categories. A number of those metrics include services that are not provided by the city. So it includes services provided by other agencies that the city of Tacoma has no control over. In addition, a number of the services that the city of Tacoma does provide are not included in that ranking, in those metrics. So we're not being rated on a number of areas where we put in a great deal of investment. This is everything from trash, recycling, libraries, our arts and culture, a number of other factors. And then for me, I also think one of the important just methodological problems with this kind of study is that you wind up comparing apples to oranges in a lot of these cases. So for example, the #1 city, anybody want to take a guess at the #1 city in the United States? Jeff?
I'll let somebody else go.
Can you take us what state it might be in? Wait, what was that? Did you say Utah?
I said Kentucky.
Oh, well, so no right answers, but the #1 city on their list, on Wallet Hub's list, is Provo, Utah. Anybody been to Provo, Utah? Oh, okay, a couple. Great. Okay, so Provo, Utah is, first of all, half the size of the city of Tacoma. Second of all, it has a completely not a mayor, not a city manager council form of government, so it's right, okay, I switched those to say numbers. Totally different form of government where the mayor is essentially the chief executive of the city rather than having a city manager. In addition, almost 90% of that community belongs to the Church of Latter-day Saints, 90% of that community. So when you're looking at these cities, it's very difficult to compare them when you're not comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. So there's a lot of variation on the list. They vary in terms of where they're located in the country, whether they're on the coast, whether they're in more of the heartland areas. They vary on how close they are to larger cities that might attract more economic development. They vary on their population size. One of the other really important items that they vary on is their historical experiences. So we all know, particularly here in Tacoma, that for generations, the decisions that were made in terms of policies for the city have had a lasting impact on how the city operates today. And so that's true for all cities, right? And so if you're not looking at cities that have similar backgrounds and similar characteristics, you're not sort of standardizing for those differences. And so it makes it very hard to compare. There's also just some larger global issues that are not within the city's control that impact cities differently. For example, the PFAS waterway and pollution along the coastlines. This is very different for cities that are inland, right? So different issues there. So I think it's again a wonderful attempt to compare cities, to compare Tacoma to other cities. But what we really need to do is find cities that are more similar to Tacoma on more factors so that we can really see the impact of sort of the independent variables. And then I would be remiss if I didn't just close by also saying that while we were 142 on that list, the city of Tacoma and our city council is making historic investments in safety, affordable housing, and a number of other issues that are continuing to improve our city and make a lot of progress. Jeff, how'd I do?
I appreciate it. Is there any news, any new information in there that he thinks is valid? Maybe it's shown up in other reports, and evaluating the services, or is there anything in there that rings true, I guess? Or is it just all kind of off science and not really a good story about Tacoma, not really a valid story about Tacoma?
Well, I would agree it's not really a valid story about the city of Tacoma government. That I would definitely agree with. It does have interesting information in there in terms of comparing to other cities, but again, even that is difficult when you're not sort of comparing across a standardized set of cities. I will say that the city, like I mentioned earlier, the city does use and prioritize a data-driven approach. That's why we've also made a lot of our data available and transparent to the public on the Tacoma Open Data website. It's why we're constantly telling you all to use 311, because that 311 system is collecting every time you report some graffiti, every time you report trash, every time you report a problem, it's getting logged into our system, and we're able to then see over time, okay, this area right here is especially problematic, and then do specialized treatments for those areas and the problem that they might be. So I do think that we like our data better than all of us.
Any more questions for Christina?
I was noticing in the other cities that were ranked similarly to Tacoma were much larger cities mostly.
Yes, San Francisco was at the bottom of their list.
New York City, it's 7 times the population. It seemed like a lot of the neighbors on the list were just.
I agree.
They were similar.
I think even Los Angeles was around Tacoma too. So yeah, again, these are just apples to oranges completely. I think too, it's important to think about two things. One, for our community, what is it that we, as the residents of Tacoma, prioritize? What do we value? Do we value, our environment, and do we want the city to invest in the environment? Do we value safety? So we are taking actions on what the community prioritizes, and not just what Wallet Hub, believes is the right thing for these cities to be doing.
Is that an annual survey?
I believe it is annual, yeah.
So hopefully we can do better for next year, and perhaps somebody at the city could consider doing a opinion piece for the newspaper.
seeing this, we really appreciate you coming and answering.
Yeah, and also think about too what draws people to Tacoma. It's, you know, people aren't just looking up the Wallet Hub article and thinking, do I want to move to Tacoma? Do I want to get a job in Tacoma? They're looking at a number of other factors. Yeah.
Bonnie has
I've been to Provo for like,
Yeah.
for like 3 or 4 day business trips. And I understand what they're saying, but also the streets are clean.
Yes.
Part of the reason the streets are clean and there's hardly any problems there is because everything closes up around 5 or 6 at night. There's absolutely nothing to do on weekends because everything is closed. So they're not bringing out the reality of some of these cities.
Couldn't agree more.
We just went to the hotel, there was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Every time we were there.
Yes, yeah, the context of the community matters quite a bit, and the history of the
The
community.
streets were basically empty.
I'm sure easier to.
So, a big round of applause for Christina. We really appreciate the way the neighborhood council program is structured, that we have a liaison in the city manager's office. And Christina is, like all of our liaisons, super receptive to questions and suggestions. And Jeff always tries to keep us as a board honest by pointing out, we did celebrate a whole bunch at the beginning of the year when we came top in the survey. So I guess it was time for us to say we're not absolutely the best ever. So, Sarah, please. John Hines said that he may be coming later, so if he's got, don't be surprised if we put him on at the end, but you're on.
Hi everyone, Councilmember Sarah Ramba, District 2, which joins District 1 here, and we are in District 2 right now, so I just wanted to give you some updates on things that I think are important and then take a few questions. So first thing I just wanted to mention is if you didn't see on social media or in the paper, we have a new Pride sidewalk, and it's on Broadway, and if you haven't had a chance to go see it, I suggest you do. It's something that just, I think, states that we are an inclusive city and that everyone belongs here, and hopefully people will feel welcome when they come. And I think it's really great because it was included where the farmer's market is on Thursdays, so hopefully you'll take a stroll down there, or if you're going to the Pantages for something, or Theater on the Square, walk on down and see it. It's really cool. All right, so did want to say something to the police because they're so sweet to come here. We did actually have an incident out in Northeast Tacoma on July 5th, actually planned on July 5th, July 6th, and someone's house caught on fire, and actually it's not just caught on fire, a piece of a firework, it looks like hit their porch and then exploded their house. And so their house was exploded and the house next door, part of it was partially burned. So fireworks, I hate fireworks, I talk about this all the time. I appreciate that we have them banned, but it just seems like even more reason to go out and get them at the tribal lands, which are all over Northeast Tacoma and the Tide Flats. And as long as we have that kind of relationship where it's okay to go get them, we're probably going to see people lighting them off. So I just suggest that, you be really careful and watch your property when you hear fireworks, because it's like an ember can hit and then your house is on fire. So on the 4th, my husband and I are out at our house because people live up above on the ridge and they shoot them off and they come and they land on our roof. So I'm just really, really appreciate that, how dangerous they are. The other thing I wanted to mention is it was really great that we did fund Porch Fest, and I'm going to say that again because I just think it's really great. This year was the first time we had funded Porch Fest through our Council Contingency Request Fund, and I'm all about it. If there's a way to support them again in the future, I'd love to help them be successful. This is the first year that it's on the north side of 6th Avenue, which is really exciting because now it's in District 2, not just District 3. I also wanted to put a shout out to the block party that will happen down on August 3rd from 12 to 6, I think it is. It's downtown. It's put on by the Downtown Tacoma Partnership and by the New Tacoma Neighborhood Council. If you don't know where that is, it's my district, like a stadium all the way to Sprague. So it's a huge area, but they're really working hard to get their neighborhood council more vibrant. And so I think this event will be a good place for them to get people excited about them. And then I wanted to just put a shout out to interim manager, city manager, Kim. We're really excited. We had the opportunity to hire him from within as he went through the interview process and he just shined. And I think you'll see him probably come to a neighborhood council meeting. He's a real, I would say, really good at balancing being in the city, but also being outside and being present. The last thing I wanted to mention is that as the chair of Community Vitality and Safety, we are reviewing our rental housing code, fair housing code, and the new, I want to say it's House Bill 1217, I might be wrong, but that was the new state housing bill that was passed. Senator Trudeau had sponsored it, and so that passed, and it's made some changes all over the city. What do we think we want to do? So they're going to be happening at Community Vitality and Safety. You can get online and listen to those, but I will try to give Peter the information about when we will be talking about that, if that's something you care about. So that's it. Are there any questions? Oh, yes, Rebecca.
Since you brought up Community Vitality and Safety Committee, and thank you for mentioning the looking at come up. I also know that I heard from somebody else in the city that our interim police chief is looking at the ShotSpotter grant, and you all have that and maybe surveillance technology tool, but generally on your agenda for March, you had to push it back. June, is there an update on that?
Thank you for asking that. I might get back to you on that because I don't remember seeing it on the agenda coming up for August.
Right.
But maybe it will be September. I know that our interim chief, Patty Jackson, had some questions, and so she asked us kindly to pull it so she could do some.
Well, I did ask Allison to pick an interim.
She's an interim deputy
city manager.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and she said as far as she knows, it's not on your agenda yet because it hasn't been fully released to move forward yet. But I don't know.
That sounds positive, don't you think? If she's like having to take so much time to think about it. I like thoughtful people.
Yeah. I just want to know.
And let me find out for you. Thanks for asking that
Thank you so
question.
much.
Are there any other questions? Oh, hi, Kit.
Hello.
Hi.
Questions. One is, could you update us on what the plan is for the streets initiative? I've not heard what's going on with that since it failed, but it was only with 25%, and it didn't fail like by a great deal. Update us on that. That would be good. And then the other question is on the city manager's office. Kind of related to also the city deficit of what I think was $24 million. Could you tell us what's the process we're going to go through now to get permanent manager?
So I'll start with the first question, and that was about the street initiatives. And I know that I wish that Councilmember Hines was here because he's been on those meetings, but what he told me was, and also talking to Councilmember Walker, is that we couldn't get agreement from our other partners to move forward on something with the street initiative. And if we were going to put something on the ballot, we would have already had to get that ready to go. So we're not doing anything for the upcoming election, but we are looking at doing something next year. And I'm not sure what that's going to look like. I think that one of the things is to really think about letting people understand that maybe it makes sense just to have the same level of service with our street initiative. I think that's one of the things they're looking at, is trying to replace what we're going to lose with exactly what we have, rather than asking for extra. That's what I've heard, and I could be off on that, but I think that's one of the things. And the other question you had was about the budget and about the city manager, yeah. So we will be starting a process. The plan that I didn't necessarily agree with, but the plan was that we were going to let the next council decide who the next city manager should be. So we're going to start a process to get someone who's going to go out and look for people, but we are not going to pick the person. So there will be a process. Anyone, even the interim city manager, if he's interested, he can apply for it. But we're not going to just make him a city manager. Did I answer your question correctly? I don't know if that would answer what you asked.
It does. It'll probably be a question.
You should ask that question over and over again.
I will.
I kept trying to ask that question to my council.
And then on the $24 million deficit, is that all resolved?
That is not resolved. No, that's why we need to be meeting with our new interim, city manager to figure out what's going to happen. And so we have no idea. We have $70 million that's sitting out that we're not getting from the federal government, possibly, that we're just, if we're not going to get that money, that's going to be really impactful to the city. And so there's a lot of unanswered questions to move forward, but we definitely need to figure that out. So I mean, I'm concerned every night. I go to bed thinking, we need to figure out how to be able to serve people with the necessary, priorities that they think are important, but also make sure that people aren't falling through the cracks. And I'm really concerned about our social services because we're going to need them more now than ever. So, anything else? All right, thank you so much for your time.
Big round of applause.
Thank you, Sarah. And just as a plug for our September meeting, the topic that we're going to be addressing in September is homelessness. As Sarah has been leading some initiatives on that, we've asked her to actually lead that meeting. So mark that will be delayed because that's the Labor Day, it falls on that Monday. It'll be a week later in September. But anyway. And before I move on to our speakers, we've actually just received 2 applications to join the board. We still have open board positions, so anybody who's interested, we're not nasty people, so if you'd like to come and join us, we have this meeting and then we have a board meeting every other month, so it's not a huge commitment. That being said, I'd like to welcome our speakers from the city. And I'm Shauna and Teresa. I'll let you introduce yourself. You only have one microphone, and that's fine.
Okay, good evening. My name is Shauna Hansen. I'm the Stormwater Management Program Coordinator for the City of Tacoma in the Environmental Services Department.
Hello, I'm Tracy Peterson. I'm the Principal Engineer with the Asset Management and Technology Services Division, and I'll be talking about the wastewater utilities.
We also have Dana De Leon, who's the Assistant Division Manager for Environmental Programs Group, my boss, and also Christina Curran, who's the Assistant Division Manager of Environmental Services Rates and Budget. If you have questions we can answer, maybe they can. Also, this first slide, and we didn't get this up here in time, the intention was to have you be filling out the Stormwater Community Survey on your phones kind of while we were talking, from 5:30 on, but didn't get that up there. So I think what we'll do is probably send it to Peter and maybe he can follow up. But this is something that we really like to have. It helps inform our stormwater management program priorities. So
we'll send that out, and we can send out the presentation as well, I'm assuming.
Yes. All right. So you probably all know this already, but we always start out our presentations with this information because half of the community does not know that our wastewater system and our stormwater sewer system are separate systems in the street in Tacoma. And the wastewater system, of course, all go to the central treatment plant or the Northland treatment plant. The stormwater system does not go to a centralized treatment facility at all. And so most of the city's stormwater pipes just discharge into the nearest water body. So that's why we're both here today, so that it's completely different infrastructure. And so we're gonna actually start with
So to start off with, wanted to give some brief background on the overall wastewater infrastructure and what we're facing as far as asset management and keeping an eye on within what we're going to talk about today. So there's about 700 miles of sanitary sewer pipe or wastewater pipe. We have about 44 pump stations across the city. Yes. Sorry. Okay. Very good. Thank you. So we have about 44 wastewater pump stations, 2 wastewater treatment plants. One is the central treatment plant, off camera, sorry. That is located here in the port area. And then the other wastewater treatment plant that we have is the North End treatment plant. This map on the right-hand side is actually of our entire service area. So the lighter green color is what goes to the central treatment plant, and the brighter green color to the north is what goes to the North End treatment. The dark green on the west side, that is Western Slope service area, and that actually discharges to Pierce County's Chambers Bay wastewater treatment. So the central treatment plant was originally built in 1952. It has gone through many upgrades, but the 3 largest, we call them phased upgrades, are 1979, 88, and 2008. The North End treatment plant was originally built in 1968, and the last major upgrade for it was in 1998. However, it has also had many other upgrades, and we're actually in the middle of design for the next big phase upgrade. It's needed to go to construction sometime next year. So with that background and knowing how much we have as far as assets, we decided back in the 2020 timeframe that we needed to do a wastewater comprehensive plan effort. So based off of why we need that, we have aging infrastructure at all different ages across the city. We have thousands of assets. We know we have increased population growth impacts from onto our utility. We also have future regulations to consider. And then we also have various goals and initiatives throughout the city that we have to consider as part of that overall planning. Ultimately, this was not a regulatory required step. And we did start in 2020. It is an ongoing process. In reality, it is part of asset management because we're not only looking at what we have, but we're also thinking out into the future. So you might be asking yourself, what kind of approach does a wastewater comp plan include? And this is just high level. We're mostly going to be focused on step 1, which is the boundary conditions. So ultimately, we went through a very large effort from 2020 through about 2023 to establish those baseline boundaries. Obviously, those boundaries are continually going to change. So we're going to actively be checking to make sure that we're keeping up to speed. This little circle, as we continue this presentation, you'll see up in the right-hand corner, so you'll know which one we're talking about. And really quickly, the first would be financial capacity. So how much do we have to spend and how much do we need to spend into the future to maintain what we have or to implement future regulations, plan for growth. Community expectations is another one that we will talk about. So what does our community expect from us and how do we consider that as part of our planning process? And then asset performance, that would be from the standpoint of what's the condition of it, what's the capacity of it, and how do we plan for the future. And external drivers is tied to that. So external drivers would include growth and future regulations. So ultimately, as we define those boundary conditions and we continue to refine them over time, through this multi-year effort, we're basically using those conditions to develop alternatives. So as we identify a project, we'll go through an alternatives analysis that considers all of those boundary conditions. And then ultimately that creates a framework of how we can establish our capital improvement plan to make it repeatable, defensible, and it helps us prioritize which projects we move forward with. So as part of this effort between 2020 and 2023, which honestly it's still going, we're doing many components of this that we'll hear we talk about. But in about 2021, towards the end of the year, we did do a broad community survey. Some of you may have seen it on Facebook. We got quite a few respondents to it. Demographics were across the city. Ultimately, though, the top 2 priorities from our community that were given to us are affordability and maintaining low rates and reliability. So making sure that we're replacing our aging infrastructure and keeping it up to speed. At the end of the day, we also did a stakeholder interview process. So we did one-on-one interviews with various groups, including our regulatory agencies that we work with, partner agencies, so Pierce County, City of Five, City of Milton, all of that map that I showed you is more than just Tacoma. We do discharge, we have others that discharge to us as well. So we interviewed them to make sure that we understood their concerns and conditions that we need to be aware of. So an external driver, now we're going to talk about that on the right-hand side here. So regulations, we are held to the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. It is a mouthful. For short, we call it NPDES permits. And that ultimately is governing how we discharge into Puget Sound. So our 2 treatment plants each have their own permit. Within that permit, there's more than just discharge requirements. There's also requirements for monitoring. So the Washington State Department of Ecology is the one who issues this permit. And so for future regulations that we need to be looking ahead, they will have us do monitoring, not only for maintaining to make sure that we're meeting our permit, but also looking at future contaminants. So PFAS might be one that you've heard of. We have new monitoring requirements in our central treatment plant permit that was recently issued, but we also have other contaminants that they're looking at as we call them contaminants of emerging concern. So the Department of Ecology uses that information to decide future regulations and how to move forward. We also have air permits, and that agency that we are held to under that is the Puget Sound Air Agency. So that covers things like odor control. So obviously wastewater is not the best smell in the world. So we do have things called odor scrubbers at the treatment plant, and those also have monitoring requirements, maintenance requirements, and operation requirements. And then finally, for a future regulation standpoint, some of you may have heard of the Puget Sound nutrient regulations. So at this time, that has been a multi-year effort that the city has been actively participating in and collaborating with our other partner utilities as well as the Department of Ecology. At this time, there's actually 2 great public comment opportunities. One is for the draft voluntary Puget Sound nutrient general permit. Comments are due at the end of July, and the other is a very robust draft Puget Sound nutrient reduction plan that's due at the end of August. So you might be asking, for those that don't know what nutrients are, why do we care about them? So nutrients for water bodies are either phosphorus or nitrogen, but ultimately, this little graphic down here, basically nutrient pollution in a water body, if you have too much of a nutrient, it can cause excess algae growth. So you might see an algal bloom in the water body. That would mean there was too much nutrient. And then what happens is with that excessive algal growth, you can actually have oxygen drops. And ultimately, that causes stress on aquatic species like fish. So that's why we care about nutrients in a water body. It is specific though to water bodies, and it's location specific and biological specific. So this is an ongoing effort that Department of Ecology is moving forward on. So external drivers as well, I kind of mentioned contaminants of emerging concern and PFAS. So one way that the city is being proactive is we're actually being part of innovation and thinking ahead. So we did participate, and it's an ongoing pilot study. For those of you that don't know what a pilot study is, it's basically a miniature version of a treatment process to see how effective is it. So we participated jointly with Tacoma Environmental Services, University of Washington Tacoma, a company that's actually located in Tacoma called Aquaga, and then ECT2, which is actually located off the East Coast. This has been funded by the Washington State Department of Ecology as well as EPA. And at the end of the day, it's an emerging technology. There's only about 10 or so of these little tiny units up in the top right around the entire world, and it's a brand new technology. Ultimately, we're trying to figure out, is this an effective treatment technology with wastewater? And so we did go through about a month and a half time span where they were on the central treatment plant site. Everything they discharged went back to the front of the plant, so it went through our full treatment process. So it was not discharged directly. But we are working through that large, robust data set and are working on a draft report with our partners. We hope that that report will come out in the next year or so. But if you guys do have questions as we're going along, this is a lot of info. Free to jump in. Another external driver that we have to look at is population growth. So we look at that using Puget Sound Regional Council information. So they are the agency in the area that helps give us those population growth impacts. It's actually based on a census tract. And so at the end of the day, by 2050, they expect that central Puget Sound is going to grow by 1.6 million people by 2050. A lot of times their projections can be higher than what actually occurs, but it's something that we use as part of our planning long-range process to know those impacts. For our city of Tacoma, we also had Home in Tacoma, which the city council approved recently, and so we are also looking at those impacts. Many of those growth impacts are held within the Puget Sound Regional Council expansion projections, but we also added a factor of safety because at the time that was approved, the 2050 PSRC came out around the same time. They may not have been aware of what our council was approving or if they were going to approve it. So next steps as far as growth projections, we're taking all of this information and we have been actively updating our hydraulic model of our collection system, and we are currently looking at impacts from growth. PSRC comes out with these growth projections about every 5 to 10 years, and so we'll continue to monitor that and look ahead to see how those impacts are going to change where we need to plan for growth rates. So another component of our boundary conditions is asset performance. So the way that we evaluate that is we need to balance risks. Risks would be, we look at consequence of failure. So if an asset does fail, what would happen? Are there assets that are impacted by it? Are there other areas impacted by it? Other risks would be if we keep delaying it, are we going to have too many assets that need to be replaced at once? So it's a balancing act. We evaluate this performance though through capacity and then condition assessment. I'll talk first about capacity. So the way that we do that, I mentioned prior that we do a hydraulic model. We have more than just hydraulic models. We have models of our treatment plants. We have models of specific pumps. We will look specifically at pipes. So that's one way that we can project out theoretically impacts from growth and current data. We also have, with those treatment plant models, are looking at something called flow and loads. And I'm going to use an analogy. Sean and I chatted through this of how do I describe this to someone who's not an engineer? And so I'm going to do an analogy of a highway. So flow would be equivalent to cars and the number of cars traveling on a highway in a given hour. So that's the volume of water that we're expecting. And then from a load perspective, that would be each of those cars and how much cargo they're holding, or trucks, how much cargo they're holding. So the more cargo, the higher the load, the less cargo, the lower the load. Those are important because it's a balancing act in a treatment plant of how much water is coming in and how concentrated is it. Hopefully that analogy makes sense. But at the end of the day, that's something that we have to monitor both current condition and future. So things that impact that are like water conservation. As you get a lower amount of water, your concentration will go up, which you would think wouldn't be that big of an impact, but it is because the plant was designed originally in 1952. So that condition that it was originally assigned to is no longer existing. So it's something you have to think about and continue to keep up to speed on. The other way we look at our asset performance is condition assessments. So we start off initially by age. So we know certain pipes are going to last a certain amount of time. Some are 50 years, some are 100 years. And then what we will go do is as we get closer to that age where it's going to need to be replaced, we will do an inspection. So this is an example of where on this bottom left picture, a pipe that we did a video inspection on. We actually have inspected all of our 98% of our wastewater collection pipes on a 5-year cycle. You might be asking that 2%, what's going on? Access is either really difficult to get to them, but we have plans in place to be able to access. Ultimately, for the treatment plants, we do a combination of data analysis. So there's a lot of laboratory data that we're constantly grabbing. We will also then take that and use our modeling and projecting out. So it's an ongoing cycle because condition is constantly changing, but that's one of the ways that we look at our system. So these two figures, these pie charts on the top, that is a snapshot in time of the condition of the wastewater utility. I recall that was probably 2023. So back in 2023, about 55% of our wastewater collection system was fair condition. 33 was good, 12% was poor condition. So you would imagine that the 12% poor is in our capital improvement plan, identifies projects to replace it. And then for our wastewater pump stations, kind of a similar pie chart. So as we continue to watch and do these inspections, we adjust that and projects are fine. That's actually a picture on the bottom right of one of our pump stations. That's actually in our, it's pretty bad condition, but it had been towards the end of its age. That's actually in the CIP for this year that they're working on. I believe that's PICS code. So the two treatment plants, we have thousands of assets at the two treatment plants. So before I kick off on that slide though, I want to point out this one on the left is our trickling filter project. The one on our it's our Northern Treatment Plant project, treatment plant site. That little blue circle is a second trickling filter. Ultimately, that's one of the big design projects that I was mentioning. So that's our Northern plant, it's much smaller. This is our central treatment plant on the right-hand side. So for these two treatment plants, we're going through developing condition assessments. Many of the tanks, we've performed those assessments, but we're working our way through the plants. There's over 8,000 assets at each one of those, so you can imagine how long that will take. Some of them you have to open up, some of them you can test from the outside, but it's an ongoing effort. We did recently, as part of the wastewater comp plan update, though, we did complete flow and load projections using those growth projections. We also updated the flow and the wastewater models for those two plants, so we can look at current condition and project out. And then as part of that effort, we did identify that the solids treatment process at the central treatment plant, with growth, we'll need to do some sort of capacity upgrade. So we'll likely later be coming to talk to you about that. That effort to figure out how we move forward with that issue took us about 2.5 years to get through, to analyze all the alternatives.
Question, there's different levels of treatment in sewers. What level do we have?
We have secondary treatment. So we have secondary treatment for the liquid discharge stream. For the solids portion of it, we have something called Class A biosolids, TIBRO. So that's the highest level of treatment that you can do for a reusable biosolids product. So that's what we have too. And there are different types of secondary treatment.
Is there a higher level of treatment that we do or should do? Or?
We are looking, so with nutrient removal regulations, we are looking at additional treatments. So you might hear the term tertiary treatment, which is kind of an all-encompassing that next level after secondary treatment, but that can be any number of things. Nutrients. Currently, because we're so site constrained, literally this footprint is very filled in for both treatment plants. We are actively looking at additional treatment options, but we're cautious to put anything in because we want to avoid stranded assets. It'd be like doing an upgrade on your house and then finding out, oof, I actually needed another bathroom, not another bedroom, and now I don't have space to do those changes. So we could upgrade plants, and we are looking at that for nutrients, but we do not know what the final limits are or when they'll be required.
While we're talking about the removing nutrients, it's my understanding that Thurston County has done something like that already with nitrogen.
So LOT, so Lacey, Olympia, Thurston County, Tumwater, that's an alliance of those agencies. They have done that.
So we have them as a model for like how much it's going to cost.
So the difficulty, if you look at our two treatment plants, these are two incredibly different treatment plants, and LOT is also incredibly different. So nutrient removal, there's a wide range of different alternatives. So when we started looking at what alternatives we could do, we started with over 25 treatment options, all that can do nitrogen removal. So we narrowed down to 8, and I will say the treatment option that they have at LOT is not one that we can do. From a space constraint standpoint, and they're also a different circumstance because they were asked to do that 30 years ago due to the Bund Inlet versus, and they did their upgrade as part of the capacity upgrade, so it was more, it was kind of a 1-2 option where they were already doing a large expansion. They also have a lot of reclaimed water options, which we have looked at that for environmental services, but our water utility, Tacoma Water, has a lot of room for growth, and so they don't currently need it, and we don't want to compete with them. Plus, the options of where we could send it to was very expensive. We were looking at sending it to West Rock. So, but they are a model to look at of many options, but unfortunately, every treatment plant is different.
I want to give her kudos back up to the streets. When the guys were out doing our street, which is not too far from here, I was amazed at how deep they had to go in the pipes. And on the side, how deep they put the rock or it wasn't wastewater, but you know, it's just regular water. But what was nice about it is they actually allowed me to look down the hole and talk to me. The important thing was when they were looking at the pipes, and they literally had to drop, you know, get down a ladder to look at all your pipes. And they actually found my next door neighbor across the street had a broken pipe of his bathroom that was leaking into the soil. He fixed it at the time, and we cannot even tell that it's like 6 to 10 feet deep. Those areas that they were fixing, so I don't think people that realize that they're doing all the street improvements, what all they're going through, they really dig deep. And they look at those pipes closely, and they were explaining how the way the rocks were set, where for the, I think it's the waste, the storm water, they actually have that angle enough to go into the next main street, so we can go down where it's supposed to be at. But it was just amazing. It's kudos to the guys.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging depending on where pipes are located. Some are very, very deep within the city, they can be over 20 feet deep. Others are more shallow, they can be close to 8 feet.
Ours is over 10. They were really.
And if you think about it, you have to actually dig below the pipe, so you have enough clearance to put the right ground cover below it to keep it protected.
Right, so look, down the hole, and he went probably this far lower than the pipes.
We actually do a lot of our inspections by, you might see some of our crews around opening manhole lids, and they'll send little kind of rovers with cameras on them down. Obviously though, with wastewater, you can get a lot of debris, so they'll send a jet down it first, and then send the camera after. And then all of those videos are reviewed by staff, including engineers, to see what's the condition of it, and we'll flag things and notice other issues. So as part of this effort, the last part of the circle is our funding requirements. So long-range funding needs are something that's an ongoing analysis, and we will be coming to talk to you with Christina likely in the future. So what we know is we have thousands of assets. We know that. We know that we have aging infrastructure at all different ages across the city, all different ages within the treatment plants and pump stations, and we know that construction costs are increasing. And so this is kind of a high-level, long-term annual funding. There's no dollar amounts on this because it is an ongoing analysis, and I don't want to give numbers that are constantly changing. But ultimately, if you think about it, our current trend is this blue line. So this is, if we continue to spend what we're spending, but we know construction costs are increasing, we know we're having more aging infrastructure, and so we're trying to close this gap, close this delta between what we're projecting that we're going to need and what we currently are spending. So how do we do that? How do we know we're adequately funding renewal and replacement of our existing assets now into the future? We have more models of funding models where we look at the age of them, and we're actually able to project out. So right now I've been working through models that are projecting all the way through 2060, because we know every asset has a different lifespan. We know certain condition assessments, we know when they were rehabilitated recently, and so we can actually model out how much we should be spending to keep up. So that is an ongoing effort. As part of that, we're trying to evaluate what risk is the utility holding if we don't close that delta. And we're trying to figure out how do we take steps into the future. So to summarize those, we have two funding needs that we're thinking about and evaluating actively right now. The first is maintaining that existing system, which I've talked about. And those strategies, we're currently working on developing them. And then the second part is how do we address growth impact? That is another key thing. That is another topic in the future that we will actively be coming to talk to you about, as well as the city council, because this is something that we're trying to evaluate. How do we address this? We don't have any solutions in place yet. Obviously, council would have to approve those, but we're trying to figure out what the alternatives are. Summarize, bring it back. Just a reminder, this is an ongoing multi-year effort. We're continually working on this. We're continually refining it. But right now, with this framework that we have established in place with those boundary conditions and how we would then use those to evaluate alternatives for projects. We're then ultimately creating a 6-year CIP, and we're trying to project out even further. So some of our projects for the treatment plants, we actually project out longer than 6 years. Thank you, everyone.
Can I ask one question on this? So you are funded by fees that everybody pays. It's not taxes, so there's no cap. You're like a utility, so if your costs go up 10%, you have to increase your fees by 10%, correct?
Yes.
Yes, so that's correct. The environmental services operates 3 separate utilities, our wastewater, stormwater, and solid waste utilities, and we do operate like a business. So that's how we think of it. So we get our revenue from customers that we provide services to. As a public utility, we try not to generate a profit. So we only charge customers enough to cover our costs, but because our costs go up every year, that's why we also increase our rates every year.
And new development, there are no development fees. So if somebody adds, you talked about congestion coming, increased density because of various entities. There's no additional revenue that comes to you from that. So any increased expenses by increased density is spread among everybody.
At this time, yes.
Yes.
I have a similar question as Peter, but I'm going to ask it a different way. So what we're paying for in our utility bill is the operating expenses. And we're not really paying for any, like, you go piggyback for capital investment.
Right.
Or like this new level of treatment for taking out nitrogen, for example. We're not really paying into anything right now for that type of service.
So when we think of our rate structure and the rates that we pay for customers, so when we're trying to think of our operating costs, we actually consider ourselves a full cost utility. So when we are developing our rates, we are considering both our operating and our capital asset costs. So the rates that you pay, on average, 30% of the rates, that's actually, there's a lot more nuance to that. On our total departmental budget, 30% of our costs are for capital projects. We fund capital projects through a combination of rates, and also we issue debt through the form of bonds, and so your rates will also be used to pay off the debt. But so that's right, a long-term leveling of how we fund capital projects. Capital costs are factored in to our asset needs, but every year, right, it's a status quo, so to speak, and then we have to evaluate if we want to make changes. So if we wanted to invest in additional innovative strategies, that is not in our current operating budget and not reflected in our current rates. So if we wanted to spend more in innovation, we then need more revenue to cover those costs. But capital is absolutely factored in and is our most significant cost driver, followed by then our personnel.
Like in 2023, 94,770,549 was generated revenue, but the expenses for $83,966,025. What happens with that?
So each utility operates in something called its own fund, which I like to think of like a bucket that separates its money from the money of the other funds and also from the rest of the city. So our wastewater fund, for example, is separated from our stormwater fund. Your wastewater bills only goes to wastewater, your stormwater bills only goes to stormwater. None of it goes to the general fund, for example, to our utility. So that surplus that you're calling it sits within that fund. And we then update our financial models annually. We actually, with our capital improvement plan, we're updating it quarterly. And so it's then factored in to the rate cycle for the following year. So if we have a really strong year of revenue performance, that means that in the next 6-year projection, the next 2-year rate cycle, we can use that surplus to buy down future rates. So it goes into the fund and is then re-projected within our financial model, but it all stays within our utility.
When we do the capital projects might have a delay, and so we may have planned that it was going to happen that year, and perhaps design took longer, permitting took longer, or you've ordered things and we have supply chain issues. So that's part of why it's a goal and it's the plan, but like all things.
Every single budget cycle, the engineers promise me that this is the year they will spend their full capital budget, and somehow, every single biennium, we tend to come in under on our capital budget.
And every year we then panic because we are projecting out that we're gonna go way over, and then somehow it just works out.
I better than want to store water.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, yeah, we can't put wastewater to.
Yeah, I think there's, but yeah, so it is a very iterative process. It stays in the fund and it's then projected in our next financial.
Can I ask a question about wastewater?
That's the next person.
Oh, that's
No,
the
I'm
next person?
Sorry, stormwater.
I'm talking about wastewater. So I've been emailing a whole bunch of things times to environmental services and the city of Tacoma and the mayor's office about the way that the wastewater is not billed fairly. And I have not gotten a reply from you guys about when you're going to review this process.
I am so sorry that we did not close the loop. No, there was actually a presentation at Government Performance and Finance Committee earlier this, when was it? June, a week ago, where, so what you're referring to is our wastewater rate for residential customer uses something called winter quarter average. And so if we have a new customer who joins our system and we don't have their water use data, then we don't have winter quarter average data to bill them. So our Tacoma Municipal Code has an assumed rate that we use until we can establish customer data.
Unreasonably high.
So we just went through an effort where we did an analysis this year of 3 years of prior history data and went to GPSC last week and are proposing to reduce that assumption.
But what I was suggesting is, especially with the increase in population we're going to get, you really need to consider how many people live at a given address. That's what you really need to consider. To be fair. And not to lose money and not to rip people off, so to speak.
We're always evaluating the systems that we use for billing. Right now, the method that we use right now is an analysis of customers, and we try to develop that average customer use. And then as soon as we have real customer data, then that customer is billed their real data. We also try to be really flexible and working with customers where we can establish any kind of water use history at a previous address. We can try to use that water use history.
But why you don't do that? When I moved, you had my history, and yet you charged me that 12 cc whatever rate, as if I didn't. And I had to call wastewater people, and then this woman argued with me saying, oh, no, we do it with everybody. And I had to call back and quote this ordinance, saying, no, you don't, you're not supposed to. Then they finally fixed it after I complained a lot. So the whole thing is unfair, and I'm sure that you have basically tricked hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars out of Tacoma residents over the years. And I want to see an audit done. And I want to know what happened in that meeting, because I've been emailing you guys and the city, and no one ever got back to me.
I think we can take this off. We'll follow up on it.
I was wondering, are you familiar with Puget Park?
Puget Park?
A little tiny park. Goes from down to the east.
Not familiar with that. No.
You can start at the bottom, you can walk up to the top of the hill.
Okay.
It starts at Brockton, and it goes down the trail, a gulch, down to the waterfront.
Okay.
I'm wondering what that smell is.
Oh, yeah, that sewer smell, that's pretty awful.
When we, 30 years ago, you could detect it, but it's just stronger every year. Right now, it's the worst it's ever been.
storage.
The second part on wastewater, there's a lot of overlap with this is on stormwater, there's a lot of overlap with wastewater, so we'll move straight through. So Tacoma also has a separate municipal stormwater permit, very similar to the wastewater permit, and that is also issued from the Department of Ecology. But it's different in that instead of having discharge limits like wastewater treatment plants do, because we have hundreds of discharge points for our stormwater outflow throughout the city, we can't do it that way. So our permit requirements are based on city programming, policies, public stormwater system maintenance, capital improvements, and also a lot of what we do is our community involvement. And the sources of pollution that the permit is trying to control are, of course, sources from everywhere in the community. And so the stormwater management program is a multifaceted program that covers a whole lot of different types of work in the city to help control stormwater pollution. And this figure on the left shows some of those elements, and includes business inspections, inspections of development projects, public education, outreach, and engagement programs. Of course, our system maintenance and improvements, but also we have pollutant tracing staff, we have spill response staff, we also have new development standards that we're working on, our stormwater design manual, and water quality monitoring that happens in the city, actually via Fox Waterway.
I was just want to I have to get my son from soccer practice,
Yeah,
so I will not interrupt your presentation.
That's okay. No, you can go ahead and jump
Okay.
in. 100% interrupt the presentation.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah, go for it. Absolutely.
Hey everyone. So John X, thank you for the presentation. Christina's right, we did our presentation at GPSC, we did a receipt issue, charging, things like that. So hopefully we'll get that addressed, and it was really particular about how we have to calculate that. So we're making changes to try to address that. I'm just here to kind of give a couple updates from what I'm working on here in the city, but this presentation is really important for your feedback, staff, as you kind of formulate this further out, thinking about how we build our city. This is the part that I don't think people think about when we think about home and Tacoma housing development. You would notice your toilet and flush. So making sure we know about stormwater wastewater report. Three big things right now. So number one, just kind of give you an update on government performance finance. We're working through some updates to the multifamily tax exemption, which I know is a topic of conversation. You all in here, stuff will be coming forward to the full city council sometime later this summer. We want to kind of get an update on what we're proposing to do for that. I'll be back forward later this summer. Number two, we updated the animal control code recently as one pet project of mine, updating the animal control code. That got finally done, so I'm done with animals for at least a little while. But lots of things around kitty cats, licensing your pets, spaying your pets, things like that. Number three, the police liaison took my whole talking point about the fact that we're going to attract more officers, trying to fill some more open positions here in the city. I think that was the big three I want to get to. Otherwise, I should answer any questions you all might have. Yes, Georgette.
I think we're going to talk about Cushman update.
Cushman, yes. I'll do that one really quick. Peter asked about a Cushman update. There's not as much to update. OTAC is kind of finalizing the final report that will be coming out of their community outreach process. So there'll be an actual physical document for us to provide feedback on. The thing that I try to say in multiple conversations, right now we're not planning on surplusing the property until 2027, multiple years in the future. We've collected all the insights and ideas that people have. We know what people have said they want to see as part of that. And so when we get to the surplus land conversation in 2027, that will be when we finally kind of decide where it goes next. There's a city policy that says that first step is we see if the tribe would like it for and offer them kind of first right of refusal. If they are not interested in this property, then it moves forward, and there's potential options where we would put out an RFP to see if people would want to use housing or mixed use project. If none of those get picked up, then it's surplus property to figure out what we want to do next. I've looked at a lot of people some really cool ideas, like all these kind of older properties that have been recreated into lots of different things, which are really cool. and I think we do some really cool with Cushman. I think the challenge is that none of those involve the property that was currently still actively in use, and people talking about when we push the use out and we do something with it. So that's kind of where we are as an update right now. I know it's not satisfying for a lot of folks that are here who are like ready for like us to get something done and do something. Right now we'll have a report that we'll bring back and kind of talk about. You guys don't meet in August, correct? You meet in August. Come back and talk. There's another neighborhood council meeting in August, so we can come back and chat about that, but that's kind of where we are right now. Christina, am I missing anything?
Well, when we come back, we'll.
Yes. Yes. And that would be the next thing I would say is that now that we've kind of completed the kind of planning conversation, the next step is the community economic development department kind of taking the lead with the project going ahead. Because they're going to be the ones who have to decide kind of what happens next. They're the department will shepherd through the rest of the process. Okay, Jeff. Get Jeff first. Get second.
So is surplusing Cushman the only option?
I mean, good question. The utility has a surplus, but that's kind of, it would have to be surplus and say that it's no longer needed for utility uses, then it could be turned over to the city. And that would be, the next, but the utility has a surplus, it's saying it's not needed power purposes anymore.
Okay. So the city is planning only right now to surplus, put it on the surplus property.
Yes.
That's really the only plan.
That is it right now. And then, so that's, and that'll come in 2027, and I try not to get too far ahead into what 2027 might look like, but that's, as of right now, that's the only process. There's no conversations about the board partners or anything yet about what's happening. It's just, we're finishing kind of the outreach process with it, potentially surplus in 2027. All predicated on the fact that Coal Power completes their crane project. They have a replacement crane.
Anything else with Joe?
Kit. Oh, then I'll read it. Kit.
Just real quick. So I mentioned before, I need to send you an email, but you're doing the walk across.
Yeah.
And second thing, here about surplus and property, but my concern comes, seeing how I told us, turn property over into housing and not sufficiently turn it over to farms. There's some parcels that should be identified, so we get.
Yeah. And we should chat more about that, right? Because currently our surplus policy is kind of highest and best use, kind of, and that is often led to housing as being the one major investment. But, there's lots of other things that this property could be doing. And the walk is happening in August.
Oh, okay.
It'll be hot, and I'm ready.
Right. So I'm a little confused about the parks. Whatever happened there, they separated from the city or something, and now it's like they've gone amok. Like when I went to Owen Beach and Port Defiance, bathrooms were broken, closed. There were those disgusting, stinky porta potties standing there that no one could possibly use. And then they dug up that whole area, they're making some ridiculous trail where there's already a trail. And then there's a place where we need a trail, which they're not doing anything. Plus that picture I showed them, and I don't know, the one where the thing is broken.
Yes.
They have people painting all over the sidewalks, but they are not fixing that one plaque, and that hole in the wall is just ugly. So why are they just completely disorganized and a big mess?
Thank you, Rita. I will say, the Park District is a separate district, and Board President Smith is right behind you, right there, who's our Park Commissioner.
So I can address the bathroom.
Oh, yes, the bathroom.
The pump station has broken. That's why it is closed. Until we get the piece to fix the pump station, it will be fortified.
Okay.
That's terrible. But then you gotta stop doing this messing up the sidewalk. Take all that crap away and take the money and fix the pump, which is more important.
We can't get the part. The part is on order. Until we get the part, we can't fix it.
We need to keep the meeting
Okay.
going with the.
So, Rita, you and I chat often, so we can talk a little further. And the Park District person's here. Any other questions? Thank you for letting me interrupt your conversation. This is very good. I will just preface, somebody did ask the question, and I don't think I would. When you do put new development in, you do pay for sewer hookup. Stormwater impacts, right? So while we don't have this direct, we're doing that's what we're talking about. Oh, no. We make people pay for it. So like when a new building comes in, they have to rebuild the sewer main or the stormwater main as part of the project as the impact is generated from it. So we do capture dollars from new people that are coming in.
Capture the immediate impact, but we do not yet capture that may be cumulatively impacted.
That is a broader policy conversation is, I'm sure, becoming sooner or later. But
Maybe this summer at IPS.
maybe this summer I don't care about it, I guess. Okay. So, thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Let's give John a round of applause.
That's a good segue. Back to our stormwater program. So there, a lot of this actually kind of does relate and is connected. Anyway, so I just did want to point out that some of the things that our stormwater rates pay for that you may not be aware is the street sweeping program, is the stormwater rate funded program. Also, we have an environmental lab at the Center for Urban Waters building where we work. As I mentioned, we have a lot of environmental stormwater monitoring testing that we do. We also have wastewater plant testing. We have testing at the landfill, groundwater quality. So they're kept very busy, and they're a top rate environmental lab at your basic Florida. Okay, so Tacoma is also working on a stormwater comprehensive plan, similar to wastewater, that we started a few years later. So we just started our planning last year. And also it's looking ahead to the next 25 years and how we're going to be meeting the requirements of managing our stormwater, including similarly to wastewater, aging infrastructure, increased population growth, regulatory drivers, and for us, climate change is also a very big impact and driver that we're dealing with. So the stormwater infrastructure system, we have 562 miles of pipe, over 18,000 catch basins or storm drains in the streets that we manage, 4 pump stations, 4 regional holding basins, or basically like large stormwater ponds, and over 300 treatment devices, which are kind of street level, like walk level treatment devices. But even so, with all those treatment devices, only about 10% of the land cover in Tacoma, the runoff is actually treated. So generally speaking, stormwater is untreated. So that's why source control means so much, and what people do and do not do on the ground is so very important. So for future growth, population growth impacts, we also have done the stormwater system model in a portion of our system, which is along kind of the Pacific Avenue corridor, and we evaluated for future growth impacts that are designed based on what the home in Tacoma anticipated maximum development density was, and we found that basically our stormwater system is going to be flooding, fully built out to that extent. So we are looking at solutions to address the potential flooding growth, which may include updating our design storm sizing, so making people upsize how they're building as the redevelopment happens, requiring more on-site, but relying on-site stormwater management, which could include either infiltrating the stormwater, soaking it in on-site before it gets to the city system, or putting it in some sort of storage tank or something like that on the property before it's released to the city system in the street. And then also building more decentralized stormwater facilities to either contain the water or treat the water at a regional scale. And then businesses could buy or developers could buy into that.
Are there any plans to recycle it, like gray water, and reuse it again for toilets and stuff?
Not on a large scale, I would say. We do encourage people to do that as part of on-site stormwater management strategies. You can have cisterns, water reuse cistern systems, which mostly cisterns are used for a lot of times landscape irrigation. But at our building, actually, at Center for Urban Waters, we have our cistern system that actually does recycle it into flushing the toilets too. So on a commercial scale, they could look at stormwater management. Okay, so one of the interesting emerging chemicals of concern impacting stormwater is 6-PPDQ, that's the chemical name, but really what it is it's a tire rubber preservative chemical that you find in tire wear particles and there along our streets. And so the city of Tacoma has been leading actually in the research to develop, telling us kind of what the concern is and what the extent of this is. Our lab at the Center for Waters is actually involved in the initial effort to identify and separate out that chemical from all the different chemical soup that's in stormwater and identify that's the one that's killing coho salmon. And also now we're also leading up a couple of other studies to measure the concentrations of this chemical in local stormwater sediments, but also in a regional scale to see just what the extent of the chemical is. And then to finally wrap it up, the climate change impacts, of course, we have actually seen over the past few decades an increase in the intensity of stormwater during events that's been happening. And so ecology in our most recent permit cycle has issued some recommendations for cities and counties how we should start addressing the impacts of climate change. And these ones that are listed on the screen here are some of the ones that Tacoma is also already pursuing, building more green stormwater infrastructure, which can include things like rain gardens, green roofs, permeable pavement street sections, things like that. Protecting and enhancing our natural areas, and actually in this current permit cycle, urban forest canopy is being incorporated into our stormwater permit requirements. Policy around protection and enhancing those on city-owned properties, and then also evaluating our storm system impacts based on future rain projections rather than basing the sizing and the design on past, what we've seen in the past, looking forward in the future. We do actually have a model or a study that has identified that. Okay, so the timeline of our stormwater comprehensive plan, as I mentioned, we started last year. We're in the middle here, and this is actually perfect timing for this meeting because we have two community workshops coming up in July that I'd like to invite you to participate in if you can. These are visioning workshops, basically to identify how you think we need to be focused on what goals of this stormwater comprehensive plan need to be focused on, leading our efforts moving forward. And so one is an in-person event on July 18th around the lunch hour at the Tacoma Community House. And there's also an online Zoom workshop at the end of the month, July 29th from noon to 1. And so we will send Peter that information about how to register for the online event. If you'd like, that would be great. And then once we have a draft comprehensive plan near the end of this year, we'll be putting that out for public comment as well. We have a website that you can find more on that process. And then I always, whenever I go places, I like to throw out these other opportunities that we really depend on community members to help us with pollution prevention for stormwater. One is calling in Tacoma 311, and I know that was mentioned quite a bit earlier in the meeting. It is also very important for identifying spills into our stormwater system. And when you call it, the sooner the better that you see something, that you say something, because then the city has an opportunity. Send our inspectors out, identify what the impact is on the system, and if it's soon enough, you might even be able to send our maintenance crews out and factor it out of the storm system, capture it before it's released into the water body. So we've done that before as well. So sooner the better. If you could report those to us, that'd be great. Also, we have an Adopt a Storm Drain program, which is our main campaign over the next few years of focus. We're trying to get people to, and I mentioned this, and people in the market are like, we already do this. We're already out there sweeping the leaves and the litter out of our drain. So that's wonderful. This program allows us to track pounds of waste that we're keeping out of the local waterways, and you can actually also, by going to this QR code, sign up and select your storm drain nearby, and it's any if you want that you're going to plan on doing. You get little reminders emailed to you, and then you can report on how much benefit you're helping us out with. This is important because street sweepers, of course, do the same, but they're only able to go out a couple times a year to each street. So in between, there's still that need to keep some litter out of some. And then finally, organizing a tidy up neighborhood cleanup. Probably many of you in this room have maybe already done this, but our tidy up program, just as a reminder, The city will provide trash bags, gloves, safety vests, and trash grabbers to help out with your event, and also you can request pickup of the filled garbage bags at the end if you need. Really are encouraging folks to take advantage of this and help. If it hits the ground, hits the sound, that's our motto. So hopefully you've heard that before, but if not, remind everybody that in the city of Tacoma, that's what happens because the country didn't rely on everybody's contribution.
Yeah, and I know this is not your area in this with wastewater and everything expertise, so I'll try to say it real quick. Maybe you can direct me to a person in the water department that can help me. I know you put fluoride in the water years past for the dental and all that stuff. They found with science lately that it's very damaging to the thyroid because it fills up the receptor cells, so iodine cannot get in for the thyroid. Who would I contact or talk to, and how would, to find out how one would go about trying to get fluoride out of the city water?
Gaines. So John Gaines would be your first point of contact.
Who?
John Gaines.
Oh,
Yep,
okay.
so if you send that question to John Gaines, he will know who in water is the best resource for you and how to manage that process.
John Haynes?
Gaines. He's out of the A's. He was on the screen earlier.
Oh, I thought it was Hines.
Gaines.
Oh, okay.
I can send us all
You
an
can speak to me
email.
and I can give you his contact.
Okay.
Next question? Yeah, sorry, back there.
I saw car washing. I mean, all my life, car washing in the driveway. And I try to find a biodegradable product to use. So I'm just really interested in hearing more about that. Lately, I've been going to a car wash, but I don't want some neighbor dialing you up and saying, hey, he's washing his car in the driveway.
Yeah, actually, the best management practice that we encourage is for either to washing in the car wash. What you're doing now, that's absolutely best, because then all of that wash water goes through a treatment process. It goes to the wastewater treatment plant. If you do have to wash your car by yourself on your own, on like the lawn or on an area where it's not, like gravel is even better, a little bit better than your paved driveway, but something where it's going to be diverted away from the better. Even with biodegradable soaps, actually, the all the kind of grit and grime that you're taking and the oils and everything that's coming off the vehicle is also a source of pollution. So yeah, unfortunately, yes, car washing is a source.
I understand that the trees can be a mitigate stormwater pollution. They capture it in their canopy, they sort of soak it up through the root system. You didn't mention that in your presentation, so I'm wondering what is the policy with stormwater regarding trees? And I understand you're spending a little bit of your money on planting new trees, and I'm wondering if that's going to change and there's plans to increase the amount of spending on for trees for mitigating stormwater.
That's actually, yeah, that is part of our work group, environmental programs group, is funded by stormwater rates, includes open space management, which is the city-owned properties that we manage for tree canopy. And also the forestry program for street trees is also partially funded by stormwater rates. So you, and ecology, Department of Ecology actually incorporated trees and tree canopy as a requirement in the new stormwater permit. So we have to now, as a measure, mitigation measure for stormwater impact, we have a policy on protecting our urban canopy and building and increasing it on city-owned properties. We're also mapping what's the urban canopy coverage for the city currently, and as well. So we're kind of setting that for the scene right now. This permit, the next 5 years of the permit, we start monitoring tree canopy as management.
Okay. What is the next step in the process in terms of making decisions about changing the policy?
Oh, so I think actually, were you going to talk about urban canopy resolution?
Yeah, so, and I think Councilmember Hines has spoken about it.
It's next.
And there is an urban forest plan on our website, and that relates to how they're going to implement street trees and roll it out within the city. And that's not only for city projects, but it's also for.
Any more questions for either? Yes.
I've read that I mean, if you're doing so much, I'm so impressed by their presentation and the knowledge that's out there. And the other day I washed my car on my driveway and I felt so guilty because I know I shouldn't have driven it up on the grass. But like I said, you're doing so much, but I read that stormwater is the #1 pollutant of Puget Sound, of Princeton Bay. And if that's true, are we doing enough?
That's a tough one because as we noted, only 10% of the pipes in the city have any kind of stormwater treatment involved or facility attached to them. So 90%, the way it was built back before we had stormwater regulations. So we're playing catch up, and it's a slow, expensive process to put treatment in. And a lot of times, even if with the treatment, you can't get all of the chemicals out. You can only get to a certain level, and then still releasing toxins. So I think really where we're focusing is the source control. So getting it at the source and the behavior change, preventing people from having track out at construction sites, putting in things to prevent that, not walking your car outside, not dumping things down the storm drain, not changing your oil on the street, all these kind of things. Because when it comes to the end of the day, the prevention is the important part.
I think one thing that we need to look at is we're peeling back layers of an onion when it comes to stormwater contamination. I mean, we have Superfund sites, right? And we have them now. BFOS has been remediated and cleaned up, and before it was barren. Now it has life in it. There's starfish down there. There's the biology that's come back has just been amazing. But in overtime regulations, we're at a point where we call it maintenance mode, where we're doing everything that we can with source control, street sweeping, line cleaning to remove the stormwater sediment that's getting washed down the drains as much as we can before it gets out there. But we can't really do a lot more until some more regulations come in, like lead and gasoline. When they removed lead out of gasoline, the concentrations just dropped for stormwater. When they had the regulation on copper and brake pads, again, you see a decrease in regulation. And people always want to look at but it's us. We're regulated over time, and we just need to. It's just behavior education. How we can change. And the tire industry is stepping up. They're looking at new tire manufacturing products that they can look at and that serve the same safety in tires, but don't have the chemicals that can harm the cocoa salmon. So we're getting there, and we just keep, as we find new problems, once you get rid of some chemical, then, you've removed harm to you can look at what's happening back east and like in Texas. They have some of their rivers have nothing in them. So all getting better, and we're lucky that we live here because we have a lot to protect, and we see a lot more than other places and I think we're ahead of the game of other regions in the nation.
That's a great finish. I think we are lucky to live here, so let's.
That was a great presentation. As somebody said, we'll be sharing this on our website. We'll send out something. I seem to have been given a whole bunch of stuff to send out. So we may actually have to start out a newsletter where we send out all this different information. But that was fabulous. And I also heard you say that perhaps you'll be coming back to us for some more input. So that's what we want the neighborhood council system to be, is that feedback into the city. So we're so lucky to have you. Thank you so much. I'm going to rush through the last couple of items. On old business, if you remember back in January, we had a presentation on the Bayside Trails. And last meeting, Senator Trudeau threw up a slide to say that they allocated $15 million to the Schuster Parkway Trail System, which really excited me. So I followed up on it, and unfortunately, none of that is going to the Bayside Trail System. That's planning money for a $120 million project. So I am continuing to work with the city on that. I'm hoping that we can perhaps work with the Parks Department. I would love to see some of that 15 million that our representatives got for us actually resulting in something tangible like a bit of pavement or a trail rather than just a planning document. So more on that. John addressed the Cushman-Adams redevelopment. Just to summarize, we sort of have a commitment out of the council because they messed up in their outreach to us. So they will not be taking action as a council before they come back to the North End Neighbourhood Council. So all of that effort being put in by my predecessors, Georgette, Jody, and everybody, we will still have more opportunities to input into that. Jeff, do you want to address anything on the historic places? Or we can follow up on that in writing. And we were actually owed an answer on the heritage tree register issue, but it didn't come through, so another thing I had to put out.
So I think,
Oh, you got?
so I have it, but also I just want to confirm, I think that was sent to Jody.
Yes.
A response was sent to Jody today.
But that response, I was copied into that, and it just said you were studying it. It wasn't like a firm answer, was it?
Okay, so I think there was a newer response that came out today, so I can go ahead.
Okay.
And if you want to share some of that.
Thank you.
Yes. So urban forestry is within the Environmental Services Department, and so the heritage tree application process is primarily through the Public Works Department, but then our urban forestry experts are the ones who evaluate the application. So as you all aware, I'm just going to go through kind of the full brief background. So there was a heritage tree application submitted for 205 trees in the Union Avenue medians. The heritage tree program requires trees both to be of a certain health and to have a certain size. So you all hired a consultant to conduct a tree inventory, and based then upon the data that consultant submitted through the application process, at this time, 10 trees do qualify as heritage trees because they meet both the health and size requirements of that program. 5 trees are missing some data, so it's a small number. And unfortunately, at this time, 190 trees do not qualify due to either being underneath the size requirement or being in poor health. So that is the status of the review of the application so far.
That sounds like bad news, but that's fine. Normally the half full guy, but thank you. We'll follow up on that and report to the next meeting when Jody comes back from her vacation. We're waiting for the city to get back to us on when they're going to come back and do the One Tacoma Comprehensive Plan update. They backed out a couple of months ago, if you remember. And one item of success was Jeff had brought to us a request that the NENC go on record with our representatives on the lack of congressional appropriation for historic preservation. We did communicate with our 3 representatives, and I understand that's gone through, which just gives us another job for next year because we have to start working for next year, I believe. And new business, Christina addressed what we were going to talk about already. Is there any other new business? If not, I really appreciate all of you staying around. Thank you again for our presenters, and I close the meeting. Thank you. Oh, sorry, next month's meeting is a special month meeting. We're actually starting at 4:30 with a tour of trees. We're going to be meeting, look on your agenda. The information is on the back of the agenda. We'll be meeting for a tour of the trees both in the university campus and also some adjoining areas, as I understand it. And then after that, we'll come through, and our presenter next month is the Tacoma Tree Foundation, Dr. Lowell Weiss, who presents to us every